Morning. Normandy. August 1944. Fog clings to the hedgerows like it's afraid to let go. The grass is wet enough to soak through my boots, and for a few blessed minutes I can almost pretend the war is somewhere else. Only the low hum of our engine breaks the quiet, steady, reliable, familiar. Inside my Tiger, the world feels predictable, almost safe. I listen to the Maybach's rhythm the way a doctor listens to a heartbeat. Dietrich, our gunner, is wiping down his sight, humming off-key. Muller, our radio operator, mutters range estimates into his notebook like he's rehearsing lines for a play. Above me, Hauptmann Weber shifts in the commander's cupola, scanning the horizon through his periscope. Everything is normal. Everything is according to the tables. For 2 years, this 56-ton machine has made us feel untouchable. I've lost track of how many Sherman shells I've heard bounce off our armor, little metallic taps that barely feel worth noticing, like pebbles thrown at a cathedral. Out here, Tiger crews are the ones who set the rules. And I've grown addicted to that certainty. Across the field, the hedgerows ripple as the morning wind pushes the fog. Distant explosions thud like drums behind a curtain. Machine guns chatter in little bursts. The same soundtrack we've lived with for months. Routine. Manageable. Mapped and measured. Then I see it. A faint spark, just a pinprick of light, almost a kilometer away. A muzzle flash. I don't even bother ducking. At that range, nothing the Allies can get through our front armor. Our firing tables say so. Our instructors said so. The battlefield has said so again and again. But when the impact comes, it's wrong. There's no familiar clang of steel defeated. Instead, a shrill, tearing howl rips straight through the turret, like the air itself is being shredded, and the world inside our Tiger explodes into chaos. Splinters. Screams I don't want to remember. And in that single impossible instant, I feel something I have never felt inside a Tiger tank. Fear. Later, they'll say that moment marked a turning point in armored warfare. That a new weapon rewrote the mathematics we trusted with our lives. But right then, all I know is that the myth we lived inside just burst open like a boiler under pressure. And what comes next will be far worse than anything we ever imagined. I used to believe armored warfare could be reduced to tables, angles, thicknesses, velocities, the clean mathematics of survival. For years those numbers defined my world. They told me I was safe. They told me the Tiger's armor was more than steel, it was certainty. But that morning in Normandy, as I dragged myself from the smoking wreck of my tank, the numbers begin to unravel. Because up until then we all believed we understood the rules. And the rules said we were invincible. For 2 years, German doctrine promised us that armor, not luck, kept us alive. The Tiger's 100mm front plate was our shield. No American 75mm could punch through it. Even their newer 76mm guns were dangerous only at close range, and only if we made a mistake. At 800 meters and beyond, we were supposed to be immune. We repeated these truths like scripture. The instructors, the manuals, the veterans from the Eastern Front, every one of them swore the same thing: hold your front toward the enemy and nothing they have will touch you. I believed it so completely that I could feel it in my bones. And so did every man who rode with me. Tiger crews carried themselves with the confidence of men wrapped in armor thicker than fate. We dictated the terms of battle. We fired at 2 kilometers while Shermans died trying to close the distance. I remember the fear in their movements, the frantic way they sought cover. We called it Tiger phobia, and we wore that name like a medal. But Normandy was different. Somewhere in those hedgerows, something new had appeared, something the old mathematics didn't account for. Rumors began spreading through the companies. Tigers destroyed frontally at impossible ranges, clean holes bored through armor that should have held forever. At first we laughed, assuming bad angles, lucky shots, panicked reports. Then officers brought back photographs. Entry holes the size of coins. Perfect circles punched through supposedly invulnerable steel. Impossible physics, they said. I felt a coldness deeper than the Normandy fog settle into me. Because if the enemy had found a way to break the rules, then everything we trusted was already dead. And Normandy, its fields, its hedgerows, its quiet deadly mornings, would become the graveyard of the myth we lived by. The morning my world collapsed didn't begin with fear. It began with confidence, the kind that settles into your bones after years of surviving battles other men die in. Our Tiger sat in a dominant hull-down position, gun laid across an open field. According to doctrine, this was perfection. Long sight lines, clear arcs of fire, no Allied tank capable of scratching us at this distance. Weber, our commander, stood half-exposed in the cupola, relaxed enough to sip from his canteen. If they come, he said, we'll swat them before they know what hit them. Dietrich laughed. I did too. Why wouldn't we? Every number we trusted said we were safe. Across the field, a Sherman rolled into view. Same silhouette we'd grown used to dismissing, short gun, narrow turret, thin armor. A tank built for men hoping their luck might last longer than their machine. But then I saw the barrel. Longer. Thicker. Wrong. A Firefly. I felt Weber tense. He muttered, 17-pounder, as if speaking the name might keep the threat at bay. We'd heard whispers about these British tanks, rare, dangerous, often disguised with paint or canvas. But even then the tables said we were safe frontally at this range. So when the muzzle flash bloomed, Weber didn't even duck. I heard the round before I felt it, a rising scream, too fast, too sharp to be anything familiar. A sabot round, though I wouldn't understand that until much later. Aluminum peeled away mid-flight, leaving only a tungsten dart slicing through the air. It shouldn't penetrate. It couldn't penetrate. The math said no. The turret rang with a tearing shriek, metal parting, armor giving way, the impossible happening in a single heartbeat. Heat washed over me. Dietrich fell sideways without a sound. Muller slumped over his radio, blood streaming from a wound too small to make sense. I barely managed to climb out before the ammunition cooked off. The explosion threw me to the ground, ears ringing, vision trembling. When I looked back, the Tiger, our fortress, our certainty, was burning, its turret punched cleanly through as if pierced by a god's needle. The rules had shattered. The illusion was dead. And all I could think was, if this is only the beginning, what comes next? In the days after my Tiger burned, the front felt different, like the air itself had changed. Something unseen was stalking us. At first, the officers insisted the Firefly's kill was an anomaly, wrong angle, weakened plate, lucky British gunners. Anything to preserve the numbers we trusted. But the numbers kept betraying us. More reports arrived. Panthers pierced frontally, Tigers abandoned with perfect round holes in their armor, crews dead before they knew they were under fire. The entries were always the same size. Tiny, impossibly small. As if some invisible hand had drilled through steel meant to stop the world. Command dismissed the early accounts. They blamed panic, misidentification, poor record keeping. The usual excuses men use when their doctrine begins to crumble. Yet every day the evidence grew. Engineers at forward depots examined wrecks and spoke quietly among themselves, their faces pale. Armor plates weren't cracking, they were being sliced. Tungsten traces shimmered in the impact zones like glittering proof of betrayal. Somehow the Allies had found a way to turn lightweight darts into tank killers. Our tactics shifted almost overnight. Orders came down, avoid long-barreled Shermans. Engage from concealment. Never assume frontal immunity. For the first time since I joined the Panzerwaffe, we were told to play defensively, not because the enemy was stronger but because we no longer understood the battlefield. British crews, damn them, adapted just as quickly. They disguised their Firefly barrels with paint, tarps, tree branches, anything to hide the silhouette until the moment they fired. More than once, our scouts reported ordinary Shermans, only for those same tanks to punch through armored columns minutes later. Every engagement became a knife fight in the fog. Ambushes replaced advances. Patrols returned shaken, speaking of shots that came from beyond safe range, of tanks exploding after a single hit. At night, around whatever fire we could manage, we whispered fears we wouldn't admit by daylight. Our armor isn't enough anymore. Something new is hunting us. Even Weber, who once mocked Allied gunnery, kept his voice low when discussing the threat. If they can kill us from a kilometer, he muttered one evening, then they've changed the war. And deep down I knew he was right. The battlefield had shifted. In silence, in smoke, in mathematics we no longer controlled. War teaches you many things, but nothing prepares you for the moment you realize the rules that kept you alive have vanished. After the Firefly's shot tore our Tiger open, I kept seeing that tiny, perfect hole in my sleep, small enough to cover with a coin, deadly enough to erase 3 men in a heartbeat. Every knocked-out Tiger told the same story. The armor wasn't shattered or bent. It was violated, pierced cleanly by a force that didn't care about thickness or pride. I saw veteran gunners, men who once recited penetration tables like prayers, stand frozen before these wounds, whispering, "How? How is this possible?" Some broke. Some refused to climb back into a tank. Some climbed in anyway, hands trembling as they loaded the first round. Even the strongest among us carried the fear differently now. Weber, once unshakable, began hesitating at crossroads, waiting longer before exposing the hull, scanning every hedgerow twice. I'd never heard uncertainty in his voice until Normandy. Now it lived there, quiet but constant. And the survivors, the ones pulled from burning machines, looked older each time. I remember visiting a repair depot where the wrecks were lined like gravestones. A loader sat on an ammunition crate, bandaged from chin to forehead. He told me he bailed out of his Panther only because the blast had thrown him clear. I didn't hear the shot, he whispered. Didn't see the gun flash. Just light inside the turret. Like lightning. Then he asked me something I'll never forget. If they can kill us without warning, how do we keep fighting? But on the other side, fear mixed with something else. British crews who once cursed their thin-skinned Shermans now held a strange, heavy confidence. Some said they felt like hunters for the first time. Others admitted a deeper dread. Every APDS round was precious, each one a life or death choice. A Firefly carried only a few of them. Miss once and the next shot might be your last. One British tanker I met years later told me, "We weren't brave, we were desperate. That tungsten was our only way to survive, you lot." His eyes were tired when he said it. So were mine. Because behind every steel corpse on the battlefield, Tiger, Panther, Sherman, there were men like us. Afraid, determined, caught between duty and terror. And now, with each new breakthrough shell, each clean entry hole, each turret torn apart, war was becoming something colder. Something ruled not by courage but by physics. Normandy was only the beginning. By autumn, the front felt like a tightening vice, each engagement revealing more of the truth we tried not to face. Our heavy armor, our pride, was losing ground not to numbers but to something far more precise. A new kind of killing. When orders came to redeploy toward the Ardennes, many of us believed this would be our chance to regain momentum. The forests, the fog, the narrow roads, terrain where a tiger or panther could dominate if placed well. Weber told us, this is where we prove the old rules still hold. I wanted to believe him. I needed to. But when we reached the front, the fog that had always protected us now felt like a shroud waiting to fall. The first signs came quietly. A Panther from our sister company took a frontal hit at nearly 1,000 meters. An impossible shot, we thought. Impossible until we saw the wreck. The entry wound was small, neat, almost delicate, the interior a slaughterhouse of melted steel and torn bodies. Someone whispered, "Apis," though few of us truly understood what that meant. Then the ambushes began. Fireflies and their cursed long barrels hid in folds of terrain, struck from positions we never expected, and vanished before we could return fire. You'd see nothing, just a flicker of muzzle flash through the mist, and then a tank beside you would erupt, turret lifting, ammunition cooking off like fireworks in a nightmare. Our confidence didn't erode, it snapped. During one advance, we moved behind a line of infantry pushing toward a ridge. The ground trembled under our tracks. I felt strong again, certain of the tiger's weight and purpose. Then, across the clearing, two fireflies revealed themselves, emerging from camouflage so perfect they seemed to materialize from the earth. Their first shots tore through our lead tanks as if they were made of tin. The explosions lit the fog from within, turning it orange and red, a glowing curtain of death. Weber ordered us to fall back, but the forest echoed with more gunfire, our retreat collapsing into chaos as radios crackled with shouts, screams, then silence. I remember gripping the hatch rim, watching steel giants topple one after another. Watching crews I knew burn inside machines we once believed unbreakable. Watching the myth dissolve in fire and snow. In that moment I understood. The age of armor was ending. And we were witnessing its execution. The war didn't end in a single moment. Not for us, not for the tanks we trusted. But there was a day when I felt the last piece of the old world fall away. It happened in a depot outside Aachen, where burned panthers and tigers were lined like corpses awaiting burial. I walked among them slowly, my boots crunching over broken glass and melted tread links. Every wreck I passed felt like a mirror held up to everything we once believed. A recovery crew was examining a tiger hull, its front plate pierced by a hole scarcely wider than my thumb. One of the engineers muttered, "No armor resists this anymore." His voice wasn't angry. It was resigned, like a man reading his own diagnosis. That was when the truth fully settled in. No thickness, no slope, no German steel could keep the new world at bay. Rumors swirled that APDS and the American HVAP were everywhere now, not the rare oddities we once dismissed, but the new standard. Every Sherman with a long gun carries them, Weber told me quietly one night. He rubbed his temples as if trying to massage the old doctrine out of his skull. We trained for armor versus armor. But now the enemy uses weapons that don't care about armor at all. The diaries circulating among surviving crews echoed the same fear. Men who once boasted of duels at 2,000 meters now admitted they were afraid to cross open ground. Panther commanders began painting camouflage on their barrels, hiding the silhouette like prey hiding its scent. Messages from the front came back grim and short: avoid long-barreled Shermans. Engage only from ambush. Frontal attacks no longer viable. Everything that had defined us, our training, our tactics, our confidence, was being rewritten by a single breakthrough in ammunition. And yet, even as fear hollowed us out, a strange clarity took hold. For the first time, we understood the true battlefield, not mud or forests or villages but industry. Whoever shaped tungsten into darts, whoever forged the faster round, whoever filled their depots the quickest, those were the armies that would win. When I later learned that APDS would become the ancestor of modern armor-piercing rounds, I wasn't surprised. It felt inevitable. The age of steel was ending, the age of penetrators had begun. And somewhere in the fog and hedgerows of Normandy, in the burning tigers we left behind, the myth of invincibility finally died.